Hello everyone, it's Jin'taan here, and welcome back to my continuing interview series of CSM candidates. If you're listening to this just after the video has come out, then you should know that on Monday the voting for the next Council of Stellar Management will start, and this election will determine who is on the player representative body, which actually flies out to Iceland and meets with CCP in person in order to help give feedback from the player base to CCP directly, and also work under an NDA in order to allow CCP to better develop new features. I personally have spent 3 years on the council, and now that I'm coming off of my final term, I'm taking the time to interview candidates who I think have a decent chance of being elected into CSM 14. But that's enough about the election and myself. Let's let the candidate of the day introduce themselves.
I am Olmeca Gold. I identify as a whaler, and I released a video really recently. And in the video, I explain what it is. Whaling is going after expensive assets which people don't want to fight you back with. Um, I have flown. I began playing AVID in 2014. I have flown with MPSI's Bomber Spar. I have FCs for them for a while. And then I kind of went to my own way. Have flown with some Russian entities, Russian wormhole entities like Innerhal and Wormhole Outlaws. And then I moved into Delve, began my activities as a mercenary, killing Delve ships, the ships of goons, for money. And at some point, it has grown something greater, more than a one-person operation, and now we have a lot of people operating in Delve. We don't necessarily have a defined alliance or coalition. Marshy and I, Marshy is one of my close buddies, also from Bomberswire times. Marshy and I have an alliance called Delve Pest Control Incorporation. We are in there, and we named our Discord and everything else this with the same name. But basically, that's like a semi NPSI where people who we trust can join. There's a lot of people from Fraternity, from Pandemic Horde, Pandemic Legion, even Test, Snuff, and also some independent people coming together to kill ships in Delve. So that's recently what I've been doing. We've been doing together to kill basically mainly super capitals, and titans in Delve. And recently, Delve has goons have deployed to North, so it has been pretty active. Everyone deployed in response. Everyone deployed back to Delve, and now we're killing goon ships in Delve, maybe with more people than ever currently.
Um,
And I am running for CSM because, well, my views are pretty known about Eve. I am kind of disturbed by late, like 3-4 years of developments where people playing in a particular play style getting buffed and people playing other play styles getting nerfed. That particular play style is what I call to be asset acquisition, particularly empire building. So it's either people who join mega empires or people who lead mega empires. They have great voice, huge voice, and a lot of influence, I think, in Eve meta through CSM or all, but also through other means like rages and so on and so forth. So I think Eve has changed in past years to be more accommodating to this kind of playstyle, and in response some other playstyles kind of disappeared or very at the verge of extinction, or really just lost members because just lost players playing those playstyles because um, basically a lot of mechanic changes push people to leave, and also ecosystem changes like where people live, where people farm, where are the targets. Those kind of changes kind of change the game, so only one play style kind of thrives and the others are kind of suppressed. I kind of want to change this a little, maybe take the wind behind my back, because it looks like, particularly in Eve North, Down Under, we have seen CCP and Hilmar talking about making it dangerous again, and making changes in Eve that makes farming and other activities a little bit more riskier, and maybe creating more PvP interaction between people. And if they're sincere in this direction, it's really, it's kind of it's nice that I'm running for this CSM and not others if they're sincere with this direction, because that's the part I think I can help the most to CCP in a CSM seat.
So one of the first sessions that the CSM will typically have at a summit is a meeting with the upper leadership of EVE Online's development team. And typically during this meeting, the CSM as a whole has tried to present a small list of 3 to 4 points during this meeting. What is a point that you feel that you could convince the rest of the CSM deserves to be presented during this meeting?
I would say rebalance the ecosystem, but that would be like too big, I assume. Is that too big?
I mean, if you want to go into detail on it, go into detail on it.
Yeah, sure. So first, I think it all emerges from the risk reward mechanics and farm. So from which kind of mechanics people acquire their wealth and get their ships and money and so on and so forth. So those mechanics, I think, encourage too much for people to blow each other and live together and be in major, huge entities, and then the same mechanics cause a particular group of people to get like a lot of assets, and other kind of people to not be able to farm, not nearly as much, and this also this affects, I think, the creation or the it affects the frequency of major nullsec wars, and it affects the frequency of people's willingness to join these nullsec wars. Essentially, what I mean by ecosystem is basically how much people you can fit into an alliance, fit into a single region, living together, um, and then how risky their farm is, and how many risk factors there are, or how much of content they're offering to the rest of the Eve with this daily farm, and then how much these mechanics encourage people to come together, so then they create these ginormous entities nobody can contest. So so there's both denial of daily content in Eve, and then denial of timer based, like Great Wars and like structure timer based wars, that kind of content. So there's denial of both kind of content emerging from ecosystem problems. So I would say we need to think about how to fix ecosystem, and to make it so that there is diminishing returns to coming together, playing together. So there's diminishing returns for having huge empires, and somewhat selectively recruiting people is more advantageous again, and or at least a legitimate play style, because it was a legitimate play style 4 years ago, but then things changed with recent changes in Eve, and then now empires can just invite non-selectively everyone. So I think all these are tied together. So um, I'm a holistic, like I have a holistic picture of Eve, where I can call all this um, ecosystem problems, but I also have many ideas about the specifics of these problems. Beginning from risk reward mechanics to going to major wars, and so on and so forth.
So one of the ways that CCP has tried to get feedback on what individual CSM members perceive as problems within the game is asking them to present 3 different things that they perceive as problem mechanics or problem areas that CCP would gain a lot out of working on. What are the first 3 mechanics that come to mind for you as areas of the game that CCP would gain from iterating on?
The 3 things I would say that they should work on as soon as possible is mobile sign inhibition rework, anomaly respawn rework, and asset safety rework.
Okay. Do you want to go into any more detail on any of those and talk more extensively about them? I know you've talked a little bit about the ecosystem problems and how they relate to the first 2, but I don't think you've talked at all about the asset safety thing. Why do you think asset safety is a problem?
Sure. So asset safety, I don't think it's a problem, but I think it can be used to catalyze more content. So the lack of content is a problem. The lack of major wars, the lack of small wars, the lack of, and also people complain a lot about Citadel spam and so on and so forth. So the asset safety rework would address those. It's one of my major proposals. I think it doesn't. Um, so a lot of people argued that asset safety should be removed, and then a lot of people said if you remove them, then if you remove it, then like nullsec line members will have problems logging off and logging or going to a vacation or coming back 2 months later, their assets are destroyed. So you cannot make it like wormholes, which I agree with all these concerns. My proposal is making uh, basically it's inspired by wormhole mechanics, how wormhole mechanics work. So in wormholes, the attacking entity has to hold a grid and particularly hold hole control to acquire those assets from the citadel. So if they lose hole control, then an hostile fleet can come in, and so they have to kind of they have to have teams across all time zones and to defend hole control. So in a similar manner, I argue that there needs to be a mobile structure that hacks into the Citadel's asset safety mechanics. And if you can actually anchor that structure, it takes 5 days. If you can anchor that structure and then the Citadel dies next to that, then the 15% asset safety tax, that tax that typically goes to NPCs, should be reverted to the owner of that structure. So that's one of my proposals. I don't think it harms anyone because it's the same for null members because they're going to have to pay that 15% anyway. So nothing changes for them, but it creates an incentive for people to attack citadels of big entities like NC, or for goons to attack NC, or for NC to attack goons, for example, or citadels in high sec or low sec, where if you see a defenseless citadel, what's the point of killing it? Well, now we at least have some kind of incentive to kill it, right? In wormholes, those low power structures no are less of a problem now because, particularly after low power changes, they're less of a problem now. People kill them because of loot, because of the reward that they're going to get. Now you create some kind of reward for people to attack each other, because right now I don't think there is any kind of incentive for people to attack each other's space, or for people to attack in low citadels in low sec, citadels in high sec. The only incentive is kind of pride, or to provide some kind of content for your members, but there is no in-game incentive. Most incentives are metagame. Most incentives are just to be able to say your empire is huge and swing your space penis, if I may. And this change offers to create an incentive for people to attack each other's structures inside the game, and I think that's one of the good ways to catalyze content in Eve.
So, in my opinion, an important part of being a member of the CSM is being able to explain gameplay patterns or uses of mechanics that feel broken to CCP in order to explain why you think that there's something that's not healthy for the game. Can you describe something that you have experience with that you perceive to be broken, or at the least overpowered, and explain why it is overpowered or broken in your view?
So as a whaler, I feel compelled to keep speaking about Sino and Supercap umbrella mechanics. I think it feels to me broken how easy for nullsec alliances or defenders to defend their space using umbrella mechanics. You can protect like 100 or 150 systems in nullsec, in which you can offer tons and tons of players, like maybe 50,000, 70,000 accounts. You can offer them farm, and those people farm, and you have a bunch of capitals, and someone gets tackled and lights a sino, and you save them. So I think this is like of course, this mechanic has changed and became more overpowered with capital proliferation, with more people having more capitals. Um, but since these mechanics haven't been introduced to the game at some point, they've been kind of always part of the game. The sino mechanics, the jump mechanics. So they are kind of taken as a given, how someone can light a sino and how someone can drop on a sino. But I think there needs to be at least some ways to work around those mechanics, particularly maybe with the buff of with further buffs to mobile sino inhibition, and maybe a new module to suppress an ongoing sino. Like that was one of my proposals. I think basically the single most broken thing I see in this game is how you cannot suppress an ongoing sino without killing the ship.
So the CSM has to give input on many things, even things that aren't normally thought of as coming under the CSM's purview, such as UI design. However, a meeting with the UI team, Team Psycho Sisters, is a part of most summits. As such, can you describe a part of the UI that you interact with heavily and identify a problem with it when used in the way that you operate it?
Okay. As you know, I conduct most of my stuff, most of my activities as a multiboxer. I almost never play with a single account. So I think that's where I could come in handy when it comes to UI issues, because some of the issues, first of all, multiboxing has become more and more prominent in Eve. So maybe us multiboxers have some problems, and maybe I could be one of the best candidates to talk about these problems. For example, there of course there are launcher issues, and like for example, launchers forget account. The Eve launcher often forgets accounts, um, um, and then it hits the multiboxer much more than the classic player, because he needs to enter the accounts again and again, and many. And then once you log in the game, for example, there is no official in-game way to copy paste UI across accounts. So you have to either use third-party tools like ISBoxer and broadcasting, which is actually, well, which apart from these particular users, broadcasting is a bad thing. It's against EULA if you have in-game use of broadcasting. So you either do that or you use some kind of third-party tools to play with game files. So, for example, one of the problems I've always came across with um, is being able to copy paste my entire Windows and so on and so forth across many accounts. Maybe one thing CCP kind of neglects when it comes to UI is, rightfully they think new players and their experience is very important and should be improved, because Eve has retention issues typically traditionally, but also right now a great bunch of players are multiboxing, so maybe their needs are a little bit neglected. So maybe CCP should consider giving equal weight to people who play many accounts at once, because we are becoming a greater and greater portion of Eve players, I think.
So, monetization is often a dirty word within the player base. However, as you're running for the CSM, I hope you understand that it's a necessary part of CCP continuing to exist, while still something to be safeguarded against becoming too rampant. What is a new area of monetization that you would argue against, and what would be your argument to convince CCP on why it shouldn't be done?
Okay, so I think first of all, the current one of the current ways for CCP to monetize Eve is pumping SP into the game. So in terms of rewards, for example, for example, I'm very kind of wary about that, because I think more and more SP people getting bigger and bigger ships, particularly when these bigger ships aren't balanced, it's kind of like invalidating a lot of other playstyles. And also it creates people like me. I actually use this mechanic, like with the recent rewards I created 45 AFK camper accounts, so it makes it very easy to for SP farmers to get some additional profit, or for uh, for people who wants to create an abusive number of accounts. They can create those accounts during the reward time. So SP pump inside the game is very worrying for me. The second thing is an area that CCP could move on. Of course, we have seen some loot boxes with skins and everything. I think as far as anything cosmetic goes, I'm totally fine with it. I think CCP should do their best to introduce more cosmetic stuff. But as far as items and modules that has an in-game effect, like ships, like modules, like even injectors, maybe. So these are the kind of items that maybe we should CCP should be very about should be careful about putting into loot boxes and putting into reward boxes, because I think there is value in the economic system of EU, where many things are player created, and they don't come from NPC shops. They don't come from, or they don't come without player effort. For example, there are like NPC LP stores, but there needs to be player effort to obtain some of the items and so on and so forth. There needs to be a bottom level player effort, and that to earn most of the rewards in Eve, and that includes ships, and that includes ISK, and that includes modules, and that bottom level line player effort should be particularly riskier a little bit, so it creates content for people hunting other people who chase rewards, like people hunting anomaly runners for ISK, people hunting miners mining, people hunting abyssal runners in their entrances, for example. So if you put these items and put rewards into loot boxes, then you kind of diminish that kind of content, and you won't see the results of that diminishing in the short term. And it's very hard to establish the line from removal of those bottom level bottom level risky activities, and then that leading to players unsubscribing due to lack of content. But I think that kind of like a long term development has been happening for Eve for a long time now, like maybe since the past 4 or 5 years. And then if you increase that bottom level content, you won't see it maybe in a year. You won't see a significant change, but that is how you organically increase your player count, the amount of organic, like real people playing Eve, creating stories, not even multi-boxes, like real single users playing Eve, creating stories, creating content, writing on social media, recommending to their friends. That's how you ensure you have an organic growth in your player base, by giving them a reason to play. And the reason to play in this case is hunting those ships. And those ships, those PV ships, they are there for rewards. So those rewards should be particularly privy to those risky activities, and not be found in random loot boxes. Or even, for example, I was kind of worried about how you can run all kinds of abyssal content in highsec, because then you deprive many people, many hunters of these ships from their targets, right? If someone opts from DD runner hunting or DD site running from nullsec, and opts into highsec abyssal running in highsec, then you deprive the hunters of this DD runner of content, and that's how you lose your players over time. That's how you make a lot of playstyles disappear over time. So what I'm saying is ships, modules, and everything that has an in-game effect should involve some risk reward process. They shouldn't appear in loot boxes. That would be what I warn CCP against. That I would warn CCP against.
So this one is very simple. What do you plan to do on the CSM in order to differentiate yourself from the other members?
Like, what kind of ideas do I plan to defend, or what kind of?
Up to you.
behavior do I? Interesting. It's not very simple. It's very vague actually. Well, I would say I do my best to ensure more explosions. That's my theme. That's my basic. That's why I run CSM for. That I would do my best to ensure more PvP interaction, and every single area of this game has different ways to and has different particular specific mechanics in which we could potentially create more player driven content. But so there in different areas this idea would manifest itself differently, but my key differentiating factor would be that I would do everything to create more kill mails and structure kill mails and ship kill mails and so on and so forth, and create more player interaction.
Alright, well, thank you very much for your time, Olmeca. I'd like to give you a moment here to make any further shout-outs and to put a full stop on why you think that the listeners should vote for you.
I think the biggest I think the major issue with CSM is overrepresentation of nullsec mega empires. So I think people should vote as many or should take in as many independent candidates into their ballot as they can. So maybe pick 10 candidates and make all of them independent, and make sure your vote counts in that way. And um, just I would advise people to vote to represent some underrepresented playstyle, because the diversity in the CSM body is, for me, I think it's the biggest issue. That doesn't have to be necessarily me, but whoever you think is an independent candidate for who is, by independent I just mean independent from nullsec mega blocks, and because they have their own votes anyway, they have their own representation. They're never overrepresented. So just vote for someone else today. Even if you're in a major alliance, just vote for some independent candidate, and for the areas of Eve which you think should be improved. That is outside empire building playstyle. It could be faction warfare. We have faction warfare candidates. We have wormhole candidates. I am a whaler. There are other candidates from other underrepresented playstyles. Just vote for either of them or all of them. Thank you.